Zacchaeus' encounter with Jesus is one of the more familiar narratives in the Bible. Reported in Luke chapter 19, it tells of how Jesus invited himself to Zacchaeus' house. Zacchaeus was a tax collector. In his work, he was the visible face of the Roman Empire, and the taxes he collected went to fund both the Roman Empire and the Judean elite. Zacchaeus was part of an economic system that made the rich rich by keeping the poor poor. The encounter with Jesus resulted in Zacchaeus' conversion, and he returned to the poor what he had stolen from them 4 times as much. He made reparation. Taxation can be a way to make profits for the powerful, but it can also be a way of redistribution of wealth. Only if the state takes an income can it provide and organize the needed goods and services to enable a healthy society that protects the life and livelihood of its citizens. Taxation today provides for much needed public goods and services such as health and education, and ensures that the most vulnerable in our society are taken care of. Taxation also allows the regulation of the overall economy by taxing the public bads. For instance, the taxing of greenhouse emissions. Particularly in the context of the climate crisis, just taxation can be used to find crucial funding to mitigate the crisis by taxing those who pollute and using these funds to ameliorate the conditions of those who are suffering the most because of the climate crisis. To distribute the tax burden among economic actors, governments use different kinds of tax mechanisms. Since the 1970s, in the wake of economic liberalization and globalization, in an economic system that is increasingly driven by profit, governments are increasing privatization and reducing social spending on health and education. This has been coupled with tax reductions for wealthy individuals and corporations. Most super wealthy individuals and corporations pay little or no tax, or a tax that is grossly disproportionate to income. Many dodge paying taxes altogether by tax avoidance, tax evasion, and tax havens. This has caused a shortage of tax revenue and plunged public finances around the world into deficits. There is evidence to suggest that $1 trillion a year are lost to tax mitigation. All over the globe, the poorest of the poor are hardest hit by this detrimental culture of tax abuse, since it prompts the decline or even dismantling of public welfare. The Zacchaeus Tax Campaign advocates for a system of just taxation in how tax is generated as well as how it is spent. The campaign is part of the NIFIA process, a joint ecumenical effort by the World Council of Churches, the World Communion of Reformed Churches, the Lutheran World Federation, the World Methodist Council, and the Council for World Mission. The Zacchaeus Tax Campaign calls for the enactment of progressive wealth taxes at global and national levels to curb the growing concentration of wealth in the hands of an increasingly powerful few, hand in hand with increased public spending to stamp out poverty. A stop to tax evasion and avoidance by multinational corporations and affluent individuals. Progressive carbon and pollution taxes at different levels to protect our only planetary home. Immediate implementation of a financial transaction tax on trade in equities, bonds, currencies, and derivatives to curb harmful speculative activities. Debt cancellation as a further measure to bring reparation and restoration to nations impoverished by the transatlantic slave trade and struggling with the impacts of runaway climate change. Be like Zacchaeus. Join our campaign. #ZackTax.